And guys, it is an honor to be here today. I can't tell you, it's full circle. And I just have to give a shout out to my fellow Charlotteans. It's good to see your representation, and I'm glad you're here with us today. So good afternoon. Like I said, I'm excited to be here with you, and I anticipate that by the end of our session today, you'll be more equipped to create and sustain an environment conducive to social capital as a means of maximizing student potential. So it's fall, right? So, and that means that it's the perfect time to till the soil. So my objective today is just that. It's to prepare the educational landscape to produce and sustain fruitful transformational relationships. So I invite you to walk with us, put on your gardening shoes. I think Dr. Daisy's in here, she might like that. Put on your gardening shoes, and let's talk about an approach, how we can how we can approach work on a daily basis to build a culture of social capital. So by a show of hand, how many of us know that in order to create sustainable relationships, we must ensure that we are intentional about creating a conducive environment? Thank you. So this might include the actual school building, organization of teams and departments, horizontal and vertical relationships. But what we're going to do is spend a little time discussing how each of these factors impact students' ability to adopt the attitudes and behaviors required to build and sustain social capital. So let's start with physical spaces. Now, physical spaces, they have a way of communicating and creating opportunities for collaboration. And this shows up in how buildings are positioned and connected. And it's also represented in color and lighting and the type of rooms and common areas that are included. There's tons of data and research out here to support this. So how about people and how they're organized? So the way that teams operate within a school structure, it communicates to students and natural supports about whether or not their input will be received as valuable. So allowing ideas to flow up and down within the organization communicates to everyone that they are valuable. It is also results in diversity of thought and the associated healthy advantages. And finally, their relationships. So when we think about relationships, we must consider peer relationships among teachers, staff, and support staff. Upline relationships among teachers, staff, support staff, and administration. And downline relationships among teachers, staff, support staff, and students. So ultimately, relationships must be framed as an investment, meaning they should be mutually beneficial with each entity giving and receiving. So being in a one-side relationship is never fun. And whether you're doing the one that's doing all the giving with no return, or you're always on the receiving end and not allowed to reciprocate, it's not a great feeling. It can be draining and generate frustration, anger, and many other emotions. And you can also start to feel devalued, less than, or insignificant. So we always want to look to relationships as an opportunity to exchange. And this means that relationships hold value, which we can talk about in terms of social capital. Now, there are three types of social capital. You have bonding, bridging, and linking. And we'll take a brief look at each of these. First of all, it's bonding. Bonding relationships are strong ties. And these are our family, our close friends. And these are also people that are most like us. And since similarity breeds connection and trust, they offer a degree of social safety. Now let's look at bridging relationships. So these are what we call weak ties. And these are our current and former colleagues and friends of friends. And we usually have more of these relationships. and they diversify our access to information and opportunities. And finally, there's linking. So linking relationships are a continuation of the bridging relationship. It's here where connections extend across entities or structures of power or authority. So you can think of these relationships as strategic alliances. Now, there's a lot of this in the way that affiliates, in fact, partner with schools and districts. So I worked with CIS for 7 years, CIS Charlotte Mecklenburg for 7 years. First as a site coordinator at West Charlotte High School, and then as a social capital team lead. And in that time, I had the opportunity to see the linking relationship between CIS and Charlotte Mecklenburg schools firsthand. The shared objective for student success provided the opportunity for a value exchange. This took place and ultimately benefited the students and the families that we served. Before I continue on, I want to open it up for any questions about these specific types of relationships. And Akia, thank you so much for watching the chat.
I don't see any questions in the chat, so.
Awesome. All right, so let's focus on the importance of relationships. Now, one of my greatest frustrations, right, when working with students was gaining ground with a student and then having that diminish by the way relationships were handled by adults within the ecosystem at the school. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced this. Absolutely. So it's very important to help students recognize their value and understand how to build healthy relationships with the adults in their lives so that they can exchange that value. Now, students that have been labeled and marginalized in ways that make them feel less valuable have a tougher time seeing themselves as valuable and having something to offer. So while it's important, it can be also incredibly difficult. Now, this means that a game that is unraveled by those same adults is more than an annoyance, but it's a detrimental setback. And I haven't only seen this through my work with students, but as a former CMS, Charlotte Mecklenburg student, I've experienced this firsthand. Now, I wasn't the best student by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't have the best behavior. But in high school, I did have a school counselor and an English teacher who believed in my ability to succeed. Now, despite past failures and their encouragement, it made me believe that I had value. So unfortunately, there were also those who did things that chipped away at that edification. I had one teacher stand me up in front of the class and he mocked my aspiration to get my degree in psychology. But fortunately, his bet was wrong. These interferences are not always intentional, but more so a result of not being mindful of the ramifications of their words and actions. So for an example, a teacher nicknamed my 3rd grade mentee Trouble. Support staff have gossiped about the school's leadership in the presence of students. And mentors who don't understand the value exchange have encouraged students to play the game versus seeking the transformation that was truly needed to take their place within the ecosystem. So the final factor, relationships, is so critical to building a culture that produces the social capital gains that we want to see in all of our communities. So why do we have such missteps in this area? I've found that these issues are usually a result of a need to build emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is foundational to your intrapersonal and interpersonal relationships. Now, before I continue, many of us, let me say this, have had varying experiences, right? With discussing, learning, and building emotional intelligence. And often it makes us feel like or assume that we have to abandon authenticity for assimilation. However, I want us to think about it from a different perspective. Emotional intelligence is primarily about knowing yourself. And to grow in this area, we build deep self-awareness so that we can both know and manage our emotional state. So this self-knowledge then better equips us to engage with others and have perspective on how they might feel and receive our words and actions. So as you can see, emotional intelligence is foundational to our ability to steward relationships appropriately. Now, emotions are an instinctive state of mind. And while we will learn that there are distinctions in how we all respond, emotionally to some situations, there are certain settings and sounds that can produce those same emotions in a diverse audience. So think about it, movies use this all the time. And what we're gonna do is test out some simple examples. I will play a clip and then what I want you to do, I wanna obtain some responses from the group on the emotion that it generates. So I ask you to listen carefully and focus on how each one makes you feel. And Tyrese, I can see you. If you can give me a thumbs up if you hear something.
You are all alone in an unfamiliar place. It's getting late and dark, and you just realize that you're lost.
All right. What emotion did that spark? Akila, you see anything in the chat?
We have fear, anxiousness, hesitation, concern, nervousness.
It's great. So all similar responses.
All similar responses.
Great. Let's go to the next one.
You haven't seen your best friend since they moved a few months ago. It's been tough not having them close by. Talking on the phone, it just isn't the same. They text you. They're coming to visit this weekend.
All right, who's smiling? Anybody?
All right, so we got some responses. We see excitement, joy, optimism, happiness.
It's great.
Several happies.
Happy, joy. Let's go to the next one.
They were expected hours ago, but you haven't heard from them. They aren't responding to any of your phone calls or your text messages.
All right, what are we feeling here?
We have some worry, anxious, dismissed, angst, curiosity, fear.
Thank you so much, Akila. So as you can see, simple emotions can be universally stimulated. That was our point of this exercise. So emotions are in essence impulses to act, and they formulate our instant plans for handling life. But what triggers these emotions? So in your brain, you have what is called the amygdala. It acts as the emotional storehouse. So the amygdala challenges every situation and scans every experience for trouble. It produces a response to perception. So in other words, if it senses a pattern, it will jump to a conclusion. But now that we know that where emotions are stored, how do they get there? So memories created by our past influence how we feel about the present. We tend to hold on to memories that have an associated emotion. And when a similar experience arises, that emotional memory is triggered and influences your emotional state. So what are some emotions and some experiences that you think help create these types of memories. So I'll call out some. Watching parents and caretakers respond to situations. So for example, if you saw the adults in your life respond to stress with anxiety, you might do the same. And on the other hand, if you observe the healthy management of stressful situations, you are less likely to experience angst when one arises. So joining a new team at work or going to a new school. So a welcoming or exclusive former experience can make the difference in how you anticipate your first day. What about sharing your ideas in a group? Now, if you've ever worked with an open-minded team, you may be more readily to share your ideas than you would having been on a team that was overcritical or a judgmental group. For instance, having overcritical siblings or friends, they may make you hesitant to give an opinion or freely contribute your thoughts in a conversation. And what about providing constructive feedback? So having your feedback received as helpful encourages you to do more of the same. But being met with defensiveness, it may make you apprehensive about providing that input. And here's one I like to share always, is interaction with pets and animals. So a person who grew up with pets as a part of their family, they're gonna have a different relationship with animals than someone's been chased or scratched or bitten, for goodness sakes, by an animal at some point in their life. So being aware of your emotions and how you feel and why is a key component of emotional intelligence. So let's practice. There's a journaling activity that we want to listen to this scenario, and we want to use this to push us forward. So you've been selected to work on a special project, and it's a cross-functional team with various departments that are coming together to tackle a persistent issue that is impacting groups across the organization. Now, you aren't sure what the specific expectations will be, but you know that this is a high-profile opportunity, that you will be working with a diverse group of people who you will be meeting for the first time, and that you have 2 months to come up with a solution. So what I want you to do is answer these 2 questions. What emotions does it generate? And also, can you track that emotion back to an experience? And it could be something that you experienced firsthand or watch someone else deal with. So keep in mind that these experiences, they may have been real, or they could have come from watching a movie or even a TV show. It's about the intensity of the emotion that connected with that event. So let's pause for about 5 minutes to be open and honest. And this is part of having a great relationship, I'll say, with yourself. So write down how this scenario makes you feel, and in any event, you attribute that feeling to. So let's take 5 minutes. All right, we're gonna take one more minute. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So what I'd like to do is just ask a couple folks to share. And again, this is less about what you journal and more about the experience. So how did it feel to not only think about how you felt, but also to explore the source of those feelings? So I want you to explore the source of these feelings, in addition to how you felt. So if I can just get anyone, and Akila, I don't know how you prefer to do this. We could just have folks come off mute, or if you think it works best for them to raise their hands.
We can do that. If you guys would like to just come off mute and give your responses, that would be great.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm off. Hi, George.
Hey, Dr. Daisy, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
This was a very recent experience for me because I went to a brand new team, the advancement team for communities and schools in Charlotte. And I had never been on a team like that before. And the whole goal of that was dealing with donations and people from the community. That part was easy. But anyway, I had a special project where I was to be bringing in a diverse group from the community, which was asked of me by the principal. He wanted to have more of the church community involved in the school, the church community that is near the school. And then it turned into a big project. Just started with one ask, and then it ended up being like 10 asks. But my point is, I was very anxious, because I'm a real on-task person, and I get really serious about my work, and it bothers me if it's not high level. And therefore, I don't sleep well. I think about the project and how it's going to turn out. And these emotions have come from childhood, ever since I was in the first grade. I always wanted to be, make all A's. Always wanted to be the best in the class. And whatever it took for me to get that way, I make myself sick worrying about stuff. My mother and dad used to get on me all the time and stop worrying about things. It always works out. So this started with me as early childhood, and it has permeated right on through my childhood. Of course, right on through my adulthood, but I can handle it much better now. But I'm always going for the highest level of excellence, and therefore it creates anxiety for me.
Thanks for that, Dr. Daisy. Truly.
And how you doing? I would say there's two things. For me, it creates, anybody that's on here that's dealt with athletics, we've been taught to push through things and take on new challenges. So when I see something like this, it invigorates me to see a new challenge to have, just to push through. So when somebody gives me something like this, it does push a button on me that says, hey, we're venturing into a new project where we can come up with a solution instead of just a comment, a conversation. So coming up with solution-based approaches to some of the questions that are asked in our organizations and the neighborhoods that we deal with, it really makes me feel good. Like I always say, we talk here about some of the marches we had lately. It is great to have a march, but what happens after the march? What's our solution going forward, and who's willing to work together on that solution? Now there is some angst to it too, because sometimes when you put a team together, as we know anybody that works with teams, there's always somebody that carries a heavier burden. So it becomes that thing of how supportive is the team that I have with me when we're going to target, and how invested are they into actually going for that approach. So those two things are when you give new pieces like this together, for me, and it started way back in same high school, elementary, people giving me projects, giving me things that where this is supposed to be a new thing. And it feels good when you're able to complete something that nobody else, or at least have a start to something that nobody else has done. It feels real good to have that piece.
That's good, Brother James. Thanks for sharing that, man. Can we get a few more?
Yeah, I'll share, George. I'm gonna just piggyback off of James. I had a very similar response to this. I think it was excitement mixed with a little bit of anxiousness. The excitement, like James was saying, is just being a problem solver and seeing a new challenge and feeling invigorated to go ahead and accomplish that, that challenge. And then for me, it also, came a little bit of anxiousness, just because, with a challenge or something that's gonna take a lot of effort to attain, that there's a lot of planning that needs to happen. And there's a lot of things that needs to kind of be put into place. So it's just, okay, now after you have that excitement, it's like, all right, now we got to get to business and really start putting together a solid plan of action and strategy of how we're going to accomplish that goal. And for me, it kind of comes from, I'm a natural adapter. I went to several different schools as a child. So like, I feel like for me, it's like I can go into multiple spaces and adapt well. So I think that kind of came with that too. And then the part of just being like, want to overcome challenges, I think for me was feeling like I had to work harder than people who were more talented than I. So being a sports guy, you see guys that are more talented, but for me, I was one of those guys that had to work a little bit harder. Even with my personal talent, I had to work a little bit harder. So I think that's where that comes from. So that was my reaction to this activity.
It's awesome, Tyrese. Thanks for sharing, man. Let's get one more.
George, this is Michelle. Hey,
Michelle.
Family, cousins, everybody. But just wanted to say I had a similar response. I think for me, initially, it didn't really spark any emotions. I think for me, it just felt like, oh, okay. But as I started trying to delve into why it didn't bother me as much, I know that in my self-awareness and what I've been able to discover about myself and my leadership style, I thrive in the people realm. So I navigate people typically pretty well. I have my faux pas, but I also recognize that with my mother and my father, and having a large family, and being in certain situations that my mother put us into that I didn't understand back in the day, but I do now, that she taught us, and my father too in his own way, they taught us how to navigate crowds. So it was, you had that talk, you better speak. When you walk in a room, you do this. When you do, so there was some certain instructions that you were given before certain social situations. And so it kind of stuck with me. And it is actually exciting to me if there are projects where you can bring people together in order to create solutions. That's exciting to me. Now, had you asked me to come up with a 6-month plan and put something in writing or whatever with the task stuff, for me, it's like, that's not as fun. But when it comes to bringing the people together to merge the ideas together, that is exciting for me. And again, it just came from just the preparation of my childhood.
That's good. Thanks for that, Michelle. And thanks for kind of highlighting some of the DISC philosophy in your response. So let's keep going. So now we've talked about the source of our emotions. Let's look at just how trustworthy they are. Have you ever looked back at a situation and thought, man, I really blew that out of proportion? or I totally overreacted. If that's you, you can raise your hand. You know, I think we can safely say most of us, at least the majority of us, have done that. But is it possible that in that moment, your amygdala hijacked the process that would have allowed you to fully process the situation? So again, the amygdala makes association comparisons. So it only needs a fraction of the information before it sends a reaction signal. And there, in fact, is an emergency route that triggers responses based on our emotional history. So it's important to know that all the facts are not necessary before arriving at an emergency reaction. So the frontal lobe, it controls thinking, reasoning, and decision-making. And it allows you to think clearly and rationally. So when you combine the two forces of intellectual logic and balanced emotion, you arrive at an appropriate response. So when you sense danger, your amygdala wants to automatically activate the fight or flight response. And your frontal lobes are also processing this stimuli to determine if there is true danger. Is the emotion credible so that it can generate a logical response? Now, in mild situations, the frontal lobe can easily override the amygdala, and this will result in a rational, logical reaction. But however, when the threat is perceived as strong, the amygdala may act too quickly for the frontal lobe to balance the response. So in most cases, the fight or flight response is less appropriate today. However, stress, trauma, and other factors may strengthen the perception of a threat and result in an overreaction. So now that we have this understanding, I want to ask you this. Have you ever experienced an amygdala hijack? I see some heads nodding. Yeah. So, but on the other hand, can you think about a time when you were intentional about slowing down to allow your frontal lobe to provide that logical input? Good. So learning to slow down and allow your emotions to work with reason is what we call intrapersonal intelligence. So Howard Gardner, he defines intrapersonal intelligence as access to your own feelings and the ability to distinguish between them and use them to guide your behavior. So in other words, you know what you're feeling, you understand why you feel that way, and you effectively use that knowledge and understanding to create appropriate responses. But how can we tell if we're growing in this area? It's all about self-assessment. So you ask yourself questions like, can I exert control over my emotional state? Do I control my impulses? Am I motivated without the promise of an external reward? Are you persistent in the face of frustration? Are you able to delay gratification? And does distress keep you from thinking logically? But so far, what we've covered has to do with self-awareness. So understanding your emotions and knowing their source, and exploring how we use them most effectively. This next step is to apply that awareness to our relationships. So we're going somewhere. Let's look to Howard Gardner again for a definition of interpersonal intelligence. So according to him, interpersonal intelligence is the ability to understand others, what motivates them, how they work, and how to work with them. He also notes that being interpersonally intelligent includes the capacity to discern, respond appropriately to the moods, the temperaments, the motivations, and the desires of others. So the interpersonal relationships that we're covering today, they're slightly more complicated than the one-on-one relationships that you usually think about. Remember this, that you are a part of an essential network of relationships that creates students' ecosystem. So in almost every interaction, you have to consider at least 2 relationships that are being impacted. And remember that students are always watching and listening. So it's up to us to be equipped to steward our relationships appropriately so that we sustain the ecosystem and model the attitudes and behaviors that we want to build in our students. So when interacting with students, the words that you choose impact that student initially, but it also has the effect on the entire ecosystem that strives for the student's success. So your response to a new process or directive impacts your relationship with the upline leader from whom it originated. But it also impacts the relationship between the students who witnessed that response and the upline leader. So when you respect or disrespect a peer, this shows up in your words and actions and can negatively or positively impact that partnership, as well as the student's ability to have an effective relationship with your peer. So here are 3 factors that we must consider when assessing how to effectively steward relationships within the ecosystem. So it's common objectives. Within the student's ecosystem, there are common objectives. Everyone wants to see the students achieve at or above grade level, at least we hope for. And we want to see them graduate. And we want safe learning environments. And there are others, but these give a basic understanding of our common objectives. And then there's shared value. With these common objectives come shared values like education, learning, safety, and parent engagement. And then there are interdependencies. Now, everyone in the network is dependent on the other to preserve the values and the values meet the objectives. So think about this. Everyone brings their unique gifts and skills together to achieve, but it's all about effectively collaborating. So now that we have a heightened understanding of our emotions and how they can help or hinder us in relationships, I want us to practice again. We're going to break out so that we can get into smaller groups. You have a scenario in your workbook. In your groups, I want you to identify common objectives, shared values, and interdependencies that will guide the parties toward preserving the ecosystem. What we're going to do, we're going to take about 15 minutes to discuss in our groups and then come back together to debrief. But before you get started, I want you to assign 3 roles in your groups. You're going to need a facilitator to lead the discussion and ensure that everyone gets the opportunity to participate. And you're also going to need a timekeeper to keep the time progressing within the time box for my long-winded friends. And you're going to need a recorder and a reporter to take notes and bring the summary back to the larger group. So here's the scenario. Your affiliate is piloting a new approach to caseload management and metrics tracking. You attended the training and you feel that this new process comes with a lot of complexity, but limited value. And you're almost certain that your peers feel the same. And you're sure that the administrators, the teachers, and the families will push back on those changes. So how do you communicate with your peers and share this process with administrators, teachers, students, and families that will push back on these changes? Excuse me. I got messed up there. On parents to things that, in the perspective, the common objectives, the shared value, and the interdependence. So this is what we're gonna do. Akila, if you can help me out here, just to get folks in the groups.
No problem. They are good to go. So if you're ready.
I'm ready. Thank you so much.
welcome back. I see a few people popping in. We have about 30 seconds. They'll be coming back, George.
Great, thanks, Akila. All right. Folks still coming back in. All right. So what we're gonna do, you know, I love to hear from each group regarding the communication strategy that you identified. And I hope that, I don't know if everybody knows, like I was in group 1 or I was in group 2. But if you have identified that report out person, let's just start with, I don't know, Akila, I may need your help.
Not a problem.
All right.
So let's do room 1, which was Alana, Daisy, and Julius. So whoever was identified as the share out person.
Great. You're muted, Dr. Daisy.
Okay.
She's just a talk.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Daisy, you muted. Truly, Daisy, you muted.
Dr. Daisy. Let me.
Thank you. Yeah, we had. I said I was the timekeeper, but I was giving the directions. So,
okay.
So they're really good. So Elena and Julius, they did most of the talking, and I just kept them on the right track.
There we go.
So, so Elena, why don't you start? Tell about your program, and Julius, you jump in. Really good discussion.
I'm sure it was.
Okay, so
Elena,
forgive me, y'all, if I have,
Elena,
can y'all hear me?
And Julius.
We can hear Elena. We can hear.
Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm feeding off of Charles Parker Academy's Wi-Fi in the parking lot. So y'all forgive me if y'all can't hear me. But so we talked about restorative circles practices, and basically how, you know, they sound great in practice, but we have seen them, well, me personally have seen them not be effective at Harding this school year. And can y'all still hear me? Because I just see people smiling on. Okay, cool. Okay. So how we've seen it not be effective, and we think that was it came from either preparation wasn't really made. Like there's some things you're supposed to do before the meeting occurs. It doesn't seem like that really occurred. You had a very large group of young ladies to meet. That didn't go well. Like there were just a lot of things that didn't go well. And so Julius was making some really good points about how we get all these new wonderful programs and you try it for a minute and then it doesn't work, and then you want to throw that away and then pick up another program. And so now it seems like I can't hear because George's thumb is stuck up in the air. James, I see your head moving. Everybody else just looks stuck. So I don't know what's happening.
We can hear you, Elena.
You're good, Elena. We hear you.
Do that, y'all. Don't do that. Okay, so yeah, so that was the one that stuck out to me when George read the scenario. That immediately came to mind because this scenario just happened like last week. It was crazy. They had to come and separate the girls because they were trying to prevent them from getting suspended. That was the goal of these restorative circles, to prevent the punitive measures. However, everybody ended up getting sick anyway because they couldn't act right in the circle. So it was a hot mess.
Yeah. Well, Elena, we appreciate you reporting out there. I think one key thing is identifying those values and those shared values that we talked about. So what makes it, I guess, to speak to the language of the other person. And so what are they going to value in this new thing that's being rolled out? And also coming from your perspective, like what do you value and how can we meet in the middle there? So that's the idea of it, but I appreciate you sharing that. And restorative circles, I understand the pain, but I agree it can be something great that can be utilized as well if done correctly. So let's go to the next group just for the sake of time. We're gonna keep moving. If you could identify who those folks are, Keela.
Room 2 is Lilium and Rose Ferguson.
Great.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Hey, Rose, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I trust that you are.
Doing good.
Great. So we've had just dialogue back and forth about any challenges that may come down the pipe. And sometimes we don't know what those challenges are. However, what may come down the pipe, whatever we may be faced with, I think the bottom line is just embracing your audience and understanding your audience and from what perspective they're coming from. And so when you understand that, maybe using testimonials, your own experience, and I think there's not a cut and dry way to roll any challenge out or anything different out. So we just kind of dialogued about some experiences that we had and how we roll things out and how we communicate with our parents about changes. Like we have a platform called Dojo that most of our parents participate in, and that's how we share any new information out to our parents. But when there's a challenge, you just never know what you're gonna get. So you just have to go with sometimes your gut feeling, your instincts, your own knowledge, your personal experiences, and just don't put yourself in a box. And just be ready to roll with all the punches that come your way.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, that is true. You never know what you're gonna get. So hi, I'm Lillian.
Hey, Lilium.
Thank you, Rose, for everything you said, because that's exactly what we talk about. So
Yeah.
You left me with nothing but just be ready, because you never know what the bump is gonna be in the road, and you just gotta be ready. Just breathe and let go and keep going.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, the thing is we want to ensure that we're modeling the right attitudes and behaviors for our students. So that's the premise of all of this. So let's keep going to number 3. Thank you so much, group number 2.
Room 3 is with Michelle, Vanessa, and Stephanie.
Okay.
Michelle
Stephanie
Price.
Lewis.
Oh,
Hey.
I was the speaker for our group. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well. Our group was Michelle, Vanessa, Stephanie, and Albany. And the first thing we kind of talked about was kind of getting to the bottom of the why. So, why are we instigating or instituting this new program, and understanding, why some people might want it and why some people might not want it. And once we get to the why, we'll develop more of a full grasp of the situation. And through having a fuller grasp of the situation, hopefully we could decrease some of that complexity and increase value, but also recognizing that no matter what, when you bring out a new program, there's going to be feelings of anxiety and nervousness, and trying to be honest and authentic and understanding that people are going to feel that way, and hoping that our firm grasp of the situation will help mitigate some of those feelings of anxiousness and anxiety.
See that?
So we talked about honesty and clarity being some of our common objectives, and kind of having a shared value of curiosity and also honesty, kind of double dipping from our common objectives, in a sense that we would create a larger sense of collaboration. And through that collaboration, we would create this interdependence between networks of people, so everyone could feel like they could have a say in what was happening.
Well, I'll tell you what, you guys did the assignment, and I appreciate that. You took a deep look at it from the interdependency piece, shared value. So thanks for that. That is it. Thanks so much. Let's move right on to group number 4.
All right.
Kenyatta, how you doing, brother?
Hey, what's going on, brother Metz? How you doing, sir?
Doing
She
well,
can read
man.
out. She can read out who was in the group before I read out.
Yeah.
So we have Crystal Carmichael, Kenyatta Bigger, Shane Peterson, and Brendolyn Thompson.
Hey.
Okay, and with our team, we kind of did the same thing a little bit as group 3, where we just kind of explored a couple of options, right? So we were able to identify 9 things. The first thing we identified was that we wanted to learn about the team's learning style. Also, get a gauge on the strengths and weaknesses of the team before formulating a plan. Number 3, we said we wanted to test out the team to see where they are in the process individually. Number 4, we said we wanted to try alternative ways to present the information due to the pushback about the information from administrations, parents, students, staff. Number 5, we said we wanted to explore the difficult parts to encourage others to at least try out the plan. Number 6, we said transparency to encourage open conversation and feedback based upon the plan that's being formulated. Number 7, we said survey others using other open-ended questions, using like a Google type form, and then reporting back out how people are feeling and what they're saying. Also, we wanted to share the data collected by others to help make a more informed decision. And then the biggest thing that we talked about is that we wanted to explore and emphasize the small impact despite the complexity of the project. So again, how do you stay grounded on the focus of what the impact is, regardless of the feedback that we're going to receive or the pushback that we receive once the plan has been formulated?
That's it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I appreciate the how. You know, that's what you guys did, and I love the approach to this exercise. So thanks so much for sharing. I think we have one more group. Is that right? Am I right, Akila? Do we have one more?
We have 2 more groups.
2 more. Okay.
So group 5 is Ayana, James, Lisa, Tamika, and Viva.
All right.
How you doing? Greetings from group 5. I've been tasked with speaking for our group. One of the things that we looked at focusing on when we talk about bringing in a new system was transparency based off of levels. We talked about how parents would get certain information, school administrators, how certain things will be talked about in-house, but when you're talking about problems with a system, that is stuff that we talk about in-house, not directly with parents and other investors. That is a way for us to we'll explain what the system's for, why we need to collect that new data, what it will go towards, but we want to keep that data going at a way where it's at their level, not at what we're doing in-house. We had talked about it in the realm of how we're doing some recruiting for our students. Tamika pointed out that when we sit there and we say, hey, we're a dropout prevention agency, some students already have apprehensions. I'm not planning to drop out. So no, we have to change the message to get those kids in so we can show them other things that we're doing, and that will get the angst down from why the program is doing it. Lisa pointed out that we talk to parents about income sometimes. So when we point out income, and now the parent is worried, does the income invalidate my student? No, it just helps us with grants. So letting them know how the information is going to be used at the different levels is always helpful for what we're trying to do when we're instituting a new program. So we looked at just really focusing on transparency, focusing on how to get the message out there, how we can tell them this is a pilot, so there will be changes coming throughout the pilot, so that way, as stuff comes on and frustrations happen, we can remind them, look, this is us trying to tool up the pilot. It's not saying it was a set program. This is us working together so we can do something better for your student and your family.
That's good. That's good. That's real good, James. If I could just insert some advice, perhaps. Perhaps when the question comes, like, why do you need my income? Maybe it's instead of it helps us secure grants, perhaps it's our desire is to serve a diverse set of young people, and so the parent doesn't feel the transaction that's involved in the relationship. So just a nugget or two. But thanks for that. That was great information, man. Let's go on to our final group.
All right, our final group is Renee, Sherry, Jesus, and Will.
All right.
Hey, how you doing, George? How are you, sir?
Brother Will, how you doing, sir?
I'm well, and yourself?
Good, man.
Good. Okay, I think we're on the correct path, but talking about beginning with the end in mind, understanding what that goal is that we're seeking, kind of working backwards, from that, and identifying those shared goals and commonalities, amongst the group. And the big question, I guess, is as we identify that goal and working towards backwards from it, what's possible? What are the possibilities with what we're doing right now? And kind of piggybacking on what something Kenyatta said, doing a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Moving towards that possibility.
It's good.
I hope I kind of hit on that.
All right. Well, that's good. Thanks for sharing, Will. Well, we have our time has concluded. I really wanted to be able to dive into some questions and all that, but you know, I think we covered a lot, and I hope that this really satisfied what you guys were looking for today. Just to recap, summarize what we discussed today. There are many factors that impact the ability to sustain a culture of social capital. Relationship management is key, and also know that we build emotional intelligence to strengthen our intrapersonal relationship as well as our interpersonal relationships. And finally, we must protect the ecosystem with consideration of the shared objectives, common values, and interdependencies. So I thank you so much for your time and the opportunity to share with you today. And I'll turn it back over to you to Akila.
Thank you again. Really quick, can we get some reactions from Mr. George Metz? Thank you so much for being with us and joining us. I put in the chat very quickly the link to the survey for today's session to give some feedback. But if you do not have time to do it today, through the same link that you used to register, that link for the survey is also there. So please, over the next couple of days, take the survey, give us your feedback. We would love to be able to have that and share it, not only with our our team, but as well as our speakers. So thank you again. Let's claps for Mr. George. Thank you so much. And we do have a closing session. So if you make your way there, and we'll see you soon.